You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. This is GreatAwakeningsTV.com, and we are wonderfully blessed to be joined by Dr. James Fetzer once again to go through some of the issues that are facing us, specifically the weather wars in the United States, the directing of the hurricanes, seeming that interestingly may be going for President Donald Trump in the election, and how also FEMA seems to be redirecting a lot of the aid and indeed stopping a lot of the aid and disrupting a lot of the help and assistance to the victims of this hurricane, as well as preparing possibly other ones. I think as part of a convergence of various artificially induced natural phenomenon to contribute to before we jump into that, I want to also open us up with the Israeli-Iran situation, how that is unfolding. And we did a quick video analyzing what the world is seeing and how the world has changed since October 7th a year ago, which I think is pretty profound. Let me play this video, Jim, and then we'll jump right into your presentation. There we go.
San Francisco, we have Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer. Scott Bennett, welcome. Today is October 7th. Operation Hostile Flood is when this happened. We're looking at a year at this point, which is a great milestone. I'm sure you'll agree. Really, we have talked, and it has been discussed at length, of the U.S. involvement in this, in terms of the military supporting this, given the regime. But I'd like to find out from you if it's just a matter of the Israeli regime placing orders for military armaments and for the U.S. to provide it, or are we looking at a more extensive cooperation that the U.S. has had with the Israeli regime when it comes to this genocidal war?
Well, let's remember this genocidal war that the Israelis have been waging has been decades old. It's only become critical in the last year, but for decades upon decades, the Israelis have been torturing and tormenting the Palestinian people, throwing tens of thousands of them into prison, and they are the true hostages, and torturing them, performing all sorts of perverse, violative acts upon these Palestinian prisoners, and encouraging their psychopathic settlers to also engage in terrorism against places like the West Bank and to storm prisons with the religious demand to rape the male prisoners. That should tell you a lot about the psychotic mentality of these demonically possessed fanatics in Israel. So this has been going on for decades, and of course they've been destroying mosques and holy sites. And I think the October 7th marks a kickback against that, but it also represents a very suspicious Netanyahu sort of 9/11 plan, where they engineered their response and delay tactics and things to make this look like a war, when in fact it never should have been. It should have been immediately settled. The United States should have immediately ceased and desisted all shipments to Israel. Azerbaijan should have stopped pumping oil to Israel. Turkey, at least, should have stopped allowing the pumping of oil to Israel. And none of this would have happened. But instead, all of these partners, all of these agencies and countries have been derelict in their duty at best and equally psychotic and murderous at worst, because they have allowed Israel to systematically demolish and pulverize and murder every man, woman, and child in Palestine, in the West Bank, in Gaza, with the ambitions of total conquest in pursuit of a greater Israel project. And that has been their true agenda for decades, to expand the geographic footprint.
All right, thank you for that. We actually have our correspondent, Muti Al-Musaba, joining us from the Gaza Strip. Muti?
So, Jim, I just wanted to kick that off as a reminder of the situation in Israel, and I'll end it by saying we haven't yet seen the Israelis respond to the last missile attack that Iran sent its way. and Iran kept a lot of its technology back. It hasn't revealed all the cards it has. I've been to Iran and I've been to their missile museum area, and I was given a tour along with other Americans that were there as part of a conference a couple of years ago. And the Chinese have said the Iranians have superior missiles to them. The Russians, of course, probably have the best, but I'd say the Iranians have the second best, even better than the United States for short-term or short range kind of conflicts, hypersonic missiles now. So, and they've got, they outgun Israel probably, I don't know, at least 10, 20 to 1, maybe more. So we haven't seen Iran strike airports or hotels or restaurants or gay nightclubs or any of the things, or banks, any of the things that make life in Israel sophisticated, civilized, cosmopolitan, leisurely, whatever it is. But if they do that, and they're not looking to kill people, they've just responded with some military targeting, and they have hit their spots. If they go after the leisure areas, if they make Israel an undesirable place and trigger an exodus, then Israel is done, because it only survives on the Jews, quote, that come in and live there. But the Zionist Talmudists have made it impossible to live there, because they've bombed and destroyed the Palestinian Gaza West Bank area into rubble. They're now doing this to Lebanon. They're going to try and do it to Syria. I think they think, Netanyahu thinks, over the next year or two, he can do this, and whoever the president is will just give him a green card to continue, despite whatever flatulent commentary they may utter. But Israel is going to trigger a collapse upon itself. And I think that's going to be announced at the BRICS meeting coming up next month, where you have the BRICS are going to organize and generate a solidarity that's never been seen, and that will, in fact, begin to disintegrate any validity or respect for the United Nations or the Security Council or anything like that. There's a new anti-petrodollar economic political alliance that's being set up without any military component, but a peacekeeping economic component, for the purposes of stripping the U.S. and NATO of its teeth, so that it can no longer go around and tear apart other nations. So wanted to give that opening assessment of the Iranian-Israel situation and the broader picture. I'll hand it to you to give us your assessment of that before we jump into the weather analysis. Go ahead, Jim Fetzer.
Well, there has been an additional development insofar as Israel sent 4 F-35s around about over the Persian Gulf to attack Iran's nuclear and oil field sites, I believe. But Russia detected and warned Iran it was taking place. So the Iranians, being alerted, the Israelis called it off. Now, I've got a report today, Scott, yet to be confirmed, that Israel has hit some aspect of Russia, and I do not know how they could be so colossally stupid. Hitting that Russian base in Syria was dumb enough, but to undertake an actual assault on some military target in relation to Russia is going to be a fatal mistake on the part of Israel. So if that has happened, it was a colossal blunder. But I must add that I have not yet confirmed. I do have it from a source in a position to know, but I've yet to see the stories, which, if true, should appear tomorrow at the latest, Scott.
Very good. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the weather analysis, and you let me know when you want to play the weather video that we've also got lined up.
Well, thank you, Scott. It'll be right off the bat because it's so good. This is a Greg Reese video about FEMA, the equitable mass murder. Actually, they're no longer even concealing the fact they want us dead, Scott. So I turn it over to you to screen share with that video. It's perfect for our purpose.
All right, let me bring it up right now.
Dong also has it set, Scott, if that would be
I've got it right here.
okay. Yes. We're not hearing the sound.
No sound?
Right.
The foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man
You can't hear that?
Oh, I can hear it now.
Okay.
to determine the world's climate and to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
What a
There are
sucko.
many known ways to control the weather, and the best way to steer it seems to be with the NEXRAD Doppler Weather Radar Network.
The circular blue flashes seen in this video are frequency transmissions from the NEXRAD network of transmitter installations. The brighter the blue flash from a frequency transmission installation, the more pronounced and powerful the repelling effect on any air mass or storm in the vicinity will be. Where there are no blue flashes, there is no transmission, thus no repelling effect, thus no resistance for a migrating storm. Translation: a migrating storm will be hindered from moving toward frequency transmissions and will easily migrate in a direction with no transmissions. So again, I ask, was Hurricane Helene's path and behavior just an act of nature, or was it engineered?
Whatever happened during Hurricane Helene, our own government is actively killing the victims of the flooding. We're in Nashville, and I saw 2 Air Force helicopter 60s, and I knew they were PJs just looking at them. And I went up to them like, "Hey guys, like, what are y'all doing?" And like, "This is what you need to be doing. This is how I'm finding people." And they're like, "We can't go. We're waiting on Title 10 orders." And I'm like, "What?" They can't get any authority. There's military helicopters all over here sitting on the ground, and they can't do nothing. Even my JSOC boys in Fayetteville, they can't get orders to come out here. It is just the most disgusting thing, and they're killing these people. And I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know what kind of conspiracy. I've heard so many things, whatever you want to come up with, but they are literally allowing these people to fucking die in the mountains right now because we can't get helicopters. Not only is the government standing down, they are stopping others from helping. And there are even reports that the confiscated donations are being delivered to sanctuary cities.
So I'm here in Boone, North Carolina. I'm at the staging area. I volunteered myself and my canines to come up and do some search and rescue efforts. Obviously, you see all my equipment. So we've been told to just turn around and go the opposite direction, because what they're doing is they're confiscating everything. Like, they would confiscate all of my gear, my car, my dogs, like literally everything. There are some people who have been tracking these FEMA agents and what they do with these supplies after. And these are people that are directly associated with the group that I'm volunteering with. And essentially what they're doing is they're taking these supplies to sanctuary areas for illegal migrants and giving it all to them.
An unmarked black helicopter was caught on camera deliberately causing thousands of dollars of damage to a donation and support center. The government is no longer trying to hide. They are now killing us out in the open. And the radical Marxists working at FEMA are not really concerned with most of the people.
LGBTQIA people and people who have been disadvantaged already are struggling. They already have their own things to deal with. So you add a disaster on top of that, it's just compounding on itself.
You know, the shift that we're seeing right now is a shift in emergency management from utilitarian principles where everything is designed for the greatest good for the greatest amount of people to disaster equity.
We, the people, point out that they are killing us, and they complain that it's hurtful.
What kind of impact has this had on the recovery effort?
It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there, but it's also demoralizing.
Right after the government says they don't have enough money for the American people stricken by the floods, and that another storm is coming, they announce another $157 million to the people of Lebanon. Joe Biden makes another Freudian slip and says the government's response will be to increase the number and intensity of these extreme weather events.
responses to increase the number and intensity of the extreme weather events and be where we're going to use all the resources available to the government to do it.
And many are now saying that this is exactly what they did with Milton, which is now expected to be catastrophic. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Well, the situation is just terrible, and as he's observing, they're no longer even hiding that they're out to kill people. Here we have PSYOP Helene will become the deadliest U.S. hurricane due to the illegitimate federal government and its criminal agencies. A week after making landfall, Hurricane Helene had further exposed the government as the enemy of we the people. It's looking more and more likely this disaster is a direct result of weather modification or geoengineering deliberately deployed against red states that would overwhelmingly cast their votes for Trump, including Dane Wigington's thesis. This latest unnatural disaster was deliberately caused by geoengineering. The following interview sheds more light on how the climate change catastrophe may have, in fact, been a result of climate modification warfare. Climate engineering researcher Dane Wigington says Hurricane Helene is the latest crime the climate engineering cabal put on the people of Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, and Florida. The storm was no accident, and neither was its path. Wigington says, you see, these events are being wrapped up to be even more catastrophic. Finally, thankfully, people are waking up to what is being done to them. More are waking up to the fact these storms are being steered. This is patented technology. We can and are recording the transmission activations. Those transmissions are posted on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. There are plenty of other storms that are steered. We've recorded other hurricanes too, such as Ian, Harvey, Michael, and Maria. This is not new, but the level of damage in this case of Helene is. Who's behind the destructive weather control? Wigington. Anybody who still thinks the U.S. government is there to protect them and preserve their future and their posterity's future needs to wake up. Those who run our government are nothing less than a criminal cabal. They are a cancer that exists for their own ends. Bottom line, with Hurricane Helene, we see the same process we've seen with other hurricanes. The storms are not allowed to organize when they're out in the ocean, but when they're close to landfall, we get rapid intensification. You have heard that term a lot lately. Why target Western North Carolina? Wigington says you can speculate on the lithium mining in the area. Locals want to restrict their crystal mines as well. What is not speculation is technology that can be used for storm steering. Wigington points out the world's oceans are superheating. If the planet were left unfettered, there'd certainly be storms spawning. That's the world's attempt to cool itself. So any intervention with these life support systems is definitely a leap in the wrong direction. All these programs are about power and control, ultimately. The fact that they are steering the storms, we can definitively conclude that is the objective. Women have been in contact with members of Congress with districts in the path of Helene. More and more people are waking up to weather warfare happening around the world to destroy humanity. Wigington says these congressional representatives are hearing from their constituents in the field, and they are saying nothing about this storm was normal, natural, or anything they experienced before. When you interfere with a planet life support system, you trigger downstream cascading effects that are beyond catastrophic. We're seeing that right now. How many of these types of storms do we need to see? All this is a giant Ponzi scheme, and it's about to come to a head. They have taught and trained people in a way so they don't know how close impact is. Those in power are preparing. They are doing everything they can to feed normalcy bias until a moment of impact. Thus, the pumped up stock market, the false job reports. Everything is going to be wonderful. They make people think we're going to have some renaissance at consumerism, but it's not going to happen. This is a grand and lethal experiment. We are at war with a criminal cabal that runs it all. This is the fact of the matter. Wiggington still holds hope more people will reach a critical awareness, force the climate engineering to stop, so we can salvage some of what's left of the life support system of planet Earth. There's still more in the interview with Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. Additional color on exactly what's being perpetrated by PSYOP Helene and why the Harris-Biden puppet regime is sabotaging search and rescue efforts. Sense receptor. The goal of this operation in Hurricane Helene is an operation, not a natural event. It was steered. The goal of the operation is to take assets, and it's a giant taking to grab land. Investment banker, former HUD official, and founder of the Solari Report, Catherine Austin Fitz, described on a recent episode of children's HD series Financial Rebellion how she believes Hurricane Helene is not a natural event, but rather an operation being run to take assets, specifically land. The goal of this operation of Hurricane Helene is not a natural event, steered in my opinion. The goal is to take assets. It's basically a giant taking to grab land. The investment banker adds, we're having lots of reports of land grab tactics being applied. Adding the op relates to the U.S. presidential election. I suspect we're seeing the White House basically, again, this is conjecture, negotiate terms. You know, you'll get disaster recovery if you do this, you do that for the election. The president's saying he's going to call back Congress. Not enough money at FEMA to go through the hurricane season, and so they're strong-arming Congress to come back and basically give the administration what they want on the continuing appropriation process. Fitz also says it's an instance of central bankers attempting to wrangle more control for themselves. This is all part of installing the digital ID and financial transaction infrastructure. You need to assert absolute control. And if you look at the patterns, whether it's the taking of the land grab or other reports we're getting out of that area, it looks to me like a lot of assertion of top-down control of counties. Partial transcripts. So let me give you some conjecture. It is not natural, goal to take asset, giant taking, an article on land grab, lots to report. Part of it is land grab, part relates to the election. So I was a federal official. What you discover when there's an emergency declared, the rules change. And there's tremendous flexibility about the money you put out. But of course, the executive branch in Congress always, but particularly the executive branch, will demand lots of concessions. There are big negotiations. So we see a big brouhaha in Washington right now about disaster recovery. We got reports from the ground, the government disaster recovery help, and money is not coming through. I suspect we're seeing the White House basically negotiate terms. So I think there's probably election negotiation. President saying he's going to call back Congress, but there's not enough money. There's an appropriation battle going on before this started. So whether it's, this is a hurricane or an election fraud, I think you have to plunder capitalism going on. Lots of rumors about big business assets and minerals in the area. So you have plunder capitalism, the election wrangling, and you have again an effort that we've been talking about since we started Financial Rebellion, the central bankers who want to assert control. All part of installing the digital ID to assert absolute control, where people are continuing to use cash and refuse to get online or are voting in a way you don't want. Remember that what the central bankers want to do is use an all-digital system and digital technology to basically replace the executive branch, the Supreme Court, and the Congress. In other words, the bankers use digital technology working with big tech and basically take control of fiscal policy as well. And that requires, basically asserting political control county upon county upon county. And if you look at the patterns, whether it's the taking or the land grab or other reports we're getting out of this area, it looks to me like a lot of assertion of top-down control of counties. Scott, your thoughts, my friend.
Well, when I look at the path of Hurricane Milton, and I think number one, the weather manipulation of the hurricanes is a criminal act. It's an act of treason, and the perpetrators and conspirators should be executed after discovery, prosecution, due process of law. That's always amazing to me that these things aren't fully exposed and prosecuted. I do see Trump has been commenting on the $750 given to the victims of Hurricane Helena versus the billions that are given to Ukraine, the 8 billion or 8 million, I think it was 8 billion that Biden just promised to Ukraine. Again, in light of this hurricane that people are suffering from. And that is the bell that Trump needs to ring and really articulate and expose that they're doing this. And that lady's commentary about being a worker, an emergency worker trained, and she's coming in and they are confiscating goods that people are bringing to help people. They have helicopters. In fact, there's a video of a helicopter blowing away all of the boxes of food and stuff that are on the ground. Terrible things. I mean, that's something that people pull their guns out and shoot at these helicopters for doing. That's when people get violent. If my parents or family were suffering from this and a helicopter did this, and I was down there, I most likely would open fire on them. And I think that day is coming because, as you said, people are recognizing you're not helping, you're hurting me. And the next one, Jim, this is sort of a beta test, but Hurricane Milton, if you look at it, this goes from the Yucatan of Mexico right up through the middle of Florida. And if it's the most devastating hurricane we've had in a century, with 150 mile per hour winds, and this goes right through the middle of Florida. It hits Tampa, where U.S. Central Command is, the military base. I was there. It's a huge population center. It's where probably the bulk of the main permanent Floridians exist. Miami and stuff like that could be seasonal, but this Hurricane Milton going through the middle of Florida, the most devastating we've had, is I think to take Florida out of the election game. It will inevitably diminish the votes being able to turn out, and certainly the independents by probably 50%. So this is this again, these are the black swans. These are the false flag events, manipulated events, and I think the next thing, of course, we'll see some more kinetic operations with explosions going off in the United States, blaming it on Iran to try and trigger all of this. All of these movements are an orchestrated, death by 1,000 cuts on the American voter, and to stop, I think, President Trump from being elected. Jim?
I think these storms are going right through Trump country, and each of these states are having a devastating effect. We're getting a report, by the way, that they're going to have a mass exodus, but that FEMA is trying to hire security firm to prevent the public from coming back to reclaim their homes, Scott. That's a final story we got here from Mike Adams. So they're really trying to create a exasperating situation, one that is fraught with danger. Bear in mind, Dane Wigington and other experts recognize they can dissipate hurricanes. There's absolute ability to ensure no hurricane ever damages the United States. They're not doing that. Instead, just as they have weaponized the law, they're weaponizing the weather. Mm-hmm. And this is just as despicable as it gets. And I'm just appalled. For 8 years, when Obama was in office, we didn't have a single because they were using their geoengineering
Mhm.
to destroy them at sea. But
Mhm.
now they've taken an opposite tack. And I do suspect that because there's so much support for Trump, they're going to punish everyone who supports Trump. And yet they have nothing to offer in the alternative. This Waltz is ridiculous. There's all kinds of horrible stuff coming about him. Kamala's a total airhead. She's incapable of actual thought. She's as vapid as they come. So I think we're being subjected to a humiliation exercise, Scott. They're going to demonstrate they can do any damn thing they want. They can install a couple of idiots in the office of president, no matter how much they're despised by the public, no matter how strong the support for the alternative, just to show they can do it, just to rub our nose in it. And I'm telling you, I think we are reaching a point of no return. I do think, because those choppers, I would have taken a rifle, I would have shot at that damn thing. I would have got some, rocket propelled grenades. I mean, I think it's coming down to it, Scott. I mean, that part of the country, they're very good with rifles. It's very rugged terrain. And frankly, the FEMA people wouldn't have a chance. It's just a matter of how long it takes for the population to realize that they're being deliberately killed. Scott, I cannot emphasize enough. The government is making no pretense about it. They are out to kill us, and they're going at it whole hog.
Well, the other disturbing thing about the Helena hurricane was the gentleman who was on redacted with a beard saying he went up to the helicopter pilots that he encountered, and he was former military, and he said, "Hey, where are you guys? What are you doing? This is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. These are the people here." And they said, "We can't do anything. We're waiting on Title 10 orders." So Title 10 orders, meaning you're waiting for the Obama, Biden, Kamala Harris appointed FEMA director, Homeland Security director, Mayorkas, whoever they are, issuing you orders to fly helicopters and rescue people, and you're not doing it until they give you orders. That's what makes those sorts of people nothing but pawns and enemies of the people. If you're not helping the people, you're hurting the people, and if you're hurting them, you're a domestic enemy, and it'll lead to you being shot and killed.
Yes, and Scott, here's some reports from those on the ground. Chris Martin said, PhD, this needs to go far and wide to put pressure on the government to do the right thing and save lives. This evening, from a Peak Prosperity member to me at my site, them. I can't post this online because it's not quite public yet, but government officials had a town meeting with all the residents of Chimney Rock and basically told them the town was being bulldozed, bodies and all, and the land was being seized by the federal government. They would not be able to move back. And basically their homes, the ones that were standing, were no longer theirs, and the federal government owned it all. I don't know what crazy play for land this is, but there's a lot of conspiracy about lithium mines. And let me tell you, as someone who lives in Charlotte and has friends that live in the area, Western North Carolina, they are not being helped. This is actually a stand down up by the federal government. Me, what the heck? That's quite disturbing. Is this firsthand, secondhand, or more distant? Them. Our friends owns an Airbnb in Chimney Rock. They had a town meeting yesterday. Someone from the federal government told them all those things in the town meeting, but doesn't want the information getting out. Also, they are not picking up the bodies. The stench of the bodies everywhere is insane, and for some reason, the government does not want to pick up the bodies. One pastor of a local church was going to order door-to-door delivering water, and they changed their delivery request to body bags because so many of the homes they've gone to have needed body bags. They're trying to keep the body count. They're not picking up the bodies. They don't want to identify the bodies. They're just leaving them to rot in the streets. I can't even, I'm stunned. This is beyond anything I could have imagined, even very recently. You always pick up and bury the dead. It's what humans do. They're violating every possible custom on purpose. Thank you for keeping me informed. People need to know about this. Let me know when you're comfortable with me posting to our forums in an anonymized fashion, of course. Then you can post. The message needs to get out. Something evil is going on in the North Carolina mountains. I just didn't want to be identified. Just today, we filled up a trailer for a shelter in Hendersonville that had no food for tons of moms and babies. All the stores around are empty or locked. In Chandler, 2,000 people haven't anything or drunk anything in 6 days and just got out an SOS for help. I'm trying to tag the Cajun Navy in Army airdrop, but people are dying by the minute. Multiple truckers have reported having tires slashed. Our friend from Chimney Rock said they've heard multiple stories of people being robbed at gunpoint to making supply runs. 2 people who drove down to Charlotte today, one that we helped, said bodies are in trees all over ditches. Something weird's going on here in North Carolina. Me. God bless you. Let me know if I can help. Yeah. Someone with a large national megaphone needs to amplify how bad it is. People are now starting to die trapped. My town is Operation Airdrop Central Command. They need pilots with planes, and now we're asking just for trucks. People with big equipment are needed, but more than anything, the nation needs to put pressure on Washington to deploy the National Guard ASAP. The 82nd was begging to go since Saturday, but have been told to stand down. Every effing Apache we have should be flying rescue mission. Please amplify the message. Here's another. America in distress. Check this out. If you're wondering why citizens are being turned away or coming to help in North Carolina and Tennessee, you want to hear my experience as someone who's been doing this as a private citizen for almost a decade. I was able to get in and out of Asheville. We brought food, water, fuel, other supplies, helped people affected by the flood. But the reasons why they are not allowing outside help. I cannot confirm why in North Carolina. I can tell you the reasons other storms I've worked. Let me share with you. The first disaster area, I finally realized this was all about money. In the Florida Keys with Hurricane Irma, after Texas was hit with Harvey, we finished our effort in Texas. We're the first assistant team to make it to Key Largo. The federal agencies had US 1 shut down just south of Key Largo. Wouldn't let anyone in or out. Even the road was okay to pass. We explained that we had boats, jet skis, food, water, chainsaws, fuel to bring. They didn't care. Wouldn't let us in. Because at that point, you rarely saw the light of vehicles in the distance. And on individual keys, meaning the emergency response team from FEMA weren't even working. It was all quiet. We decided we'd go in anyway. We filled up the boats and jet skis with all the food we could reasonably carry, went white water around their BS blockade, around their law enforcement presence in the water. It was 87 miles to get to our first stop, Cujo Key and Sugarloaf. When we arrived there, we were greeted by a homeowner. For privacy, I won't name him, who was elated to see us and all the supplies we brought. His house was in shambles. We started offloading supplies on the shoreline and helping to get them into what was left of his home. During the process, he explained that FEMA had set up a command center at a local high school, but they weren't doing anything to help the residents, not even bringing them water. Instead, they were driving around using a loudspeaker telling people to stay in their homes. They weren't even helping the homeowners with supplies. I was skeptical at first while he was telling me this, but then he said something that broke my heart. He told us the people at the Keys were all in despair because they'd just seen weeks before the overwhelming support for Texas with Hurricane Harvey by the citizens of the country. He and his neighbors on all the Keys felt America had forgotten about them completely because at this point, 5 days after landfall, all they'd seen was FEMA and they were of no help. The residents were cut off from the outside world, no cellular, no internet, no way to contact anyone, hear of any efforts to try to help. The only communication we had was from a local radio in Sugarloaf, that was broadcasting on AM to the surrounding keys. The man, after hearing there was a citizen trying to bring them help, but being refused entry by federal law enforcement, was visibly upset. He and his neighbors really thought the country had abandoned them. He insisted we get into his waterlogged truck, that he take us to the radio station so he could go live on the air, tell citizens trapped in the keys that we, the American people, were there to help, and that the government was trying to stop us. And that's exactly what we did. After that, we were determined to help as many as we could, but we were met with red tape throughout the whole process and time we were in the Keys. We finally were able to talk to authorities that led us down to Ferro Blanco Resort and Marathon toward the end of Boot Key. This was the same hotel where state and local authorities were staging their personnel, and they were happy to see us. I was able to coordinate several trucks full of supplies to be brought down to the EOC and Marathon. I was privileged of meeting, but I was informed that all the semis full of food, water, and hygiene were to be turned around and not allowed to be offloaded for distribution. I diverted all semis to the Ferro Blanco Resort and Marathon and filled the entire first floor with pallet upon pallet of food, water, and essential supplies, creating a food pantry for residents. Come and get anything, however much they needed. From local state troopers to the homeless, all were given wheelbarrows and free rein to get anything they needed. We also delivered supplies to Big Pine Key. We helped establish a tent city on Big Pine Key. Big companies like Tito Vaca and Wheelan just kept bringing trucks full of everything needed. When FEMA finally started handing out boxes of canned goods, limited to one per household, we were filling cars full of food and supplies for people and pets. There's so much more to this story in the Keys, and further, for other storms we worked. The common theme, though, is the federal government always trying to keep citizens from helping, and the local authorities, the one who work and live in the area, are always happy to have outside help. I call out Elon Musk, anyone else can monetarily help people like myself and those who work with me, who have the knowledge and will to help those devastated by these disasters. And here, of course, we have this again about how it's done. But Scott, let me just say, they have a list of approved vendors. In other words, this is a scam. They only have approved vendors, so using federal money to pay off their buddies who are the approved vendors, and they're not going to let anyone else have any help so they can maintain control. Also, it appears they want to have people die. I think that's what's going on in North Carolina for certainty. And it sure looks a lot like that to me down in the Keys. Your thoughts?
Well, it's either gross incompetence or it's conspiracy to murder and destroy and cause chaos. The latter is treason. The latter is declaration of a tyrannical entity, where the Declaration of Independence declares when the government becomes tyrannical, it is the right and the duty of the people to overthrow such government and reconstitute one fitting unto them. So the overthrowing of any government official in these counties, in these towns, in this state needs to happen if that is what is being done. This is not something to be negotiated or to be analyzed in a congressional hearing. This is life or death, and in life or death, you either allow yourself to be killed by this sort of conspiratorial action, or you survive by killing he or they who are trying to kill you by denying you essentials. It comes right down to it. Now, I'm always a little bit suspicious on some of these because government in state, the North Carolina government is responsible. The governor is responsible. I don't know if he's a Democrat or what, but the North Carolina governor and the North Carolina National Guard and local police, local officials and stuff, they are responsible. The sheriff of the county where this hurricane has gone through, where these people are suffering, where is the sheriff? He is the ultimate law enforcement authority. He can deputize everyone within that county to provide aid, to provide sustenance. So if these things aren't happening, why not? Because that's what the Constitution and the state constitution provides and demands. So there is no FEMA jurisdictional authority that can tell a sheriff or a governor, we're taking over. You can't do anything. That's when the governor says, no, we're doing everything. We will take control of this. You can provide and you can occupy a certain part, but you will not tell us or our state citizens how we can or cannot help each other. So I'm very suspicious on things like this where they present a top down, the FEMA federal government is stepping in to control all of this, because it's totally unconstitutional, and it's if this is a Republican state too and a Republican governor, it's totally uncharacteristic. So I'd want to see this fully exploited, of course, and the congressional actions should be taking place. There should be volatile, furious presentations on the congressional floor about this if what you're describing is actually happening to the degree that it's described. So you know, this if it is happening the way it's described, it's overthrow, it's tyranny, it's revolution, civil war triggering, and you know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Jim?
That I think we're witnessing what politically is called an October surprise. Here we have incoming intel from Health Ranger Mike Adams. FEMA is waving ungodly amounts of money at private security firms right now, begging for security contractors to station at Florida to prevent Floridians from returning to their homes and businesses after the storm hits. Evacuation orders are to push people out of Florida and keep them out. Reportedly, Delta Force personnel advising FEMA are at the top, devising denial of area enforcement plans, which will be enforced at gunpoint if required. I'm told FEMA is practically panicked to get enough armed personnel on site, anticipating a tremendous amount of resistance from displaced people who want to return home to salvage whatever they can. This is the next step up the escalation ladder as the federal government wages war against the American people, as we saw FEMA carried out in North Carolina, actively hindering rescue efforts to maximize starvation and death. To the people, do not escalate. Hold your ground peacefully and firmly. This looks a lot like a January 6th style draft to provoke an insurrection and declare martial law to cancel the election. Don't play into their hands. Easier said than done. Despite instructing a relief effort, FEMA's Griswold says criticizing her agency is dangerous. It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees. When you have this dangerous rhetoric like you're hearing, it creates fear in our own employees. Check this out.
So much is going viral online as well. One user suggested yesterday that a militia should go against FEMA. It got more than 500,000 views. What kind of impact has this had on the recovery effort?
It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there, but it's also demoralizing to all of the first responders that have been out there in their communities helping people, FEMA staff, volunteers, the private sector that are working side by side with local officials to go out and help people. I need to make sure I can get the resources to where they're needed. And when you have this dangerous rhetoric like you're hearing, it creates fear in our own employees. And we need to make sure we're getting help to the people who need it.
But Scott, she's predicating that on the assumption that they're actually doing help for the people when they're not. They're letting them die. They're obstructing. They're killing them. So the situation is the opposite. She's just a patsy, just that's out there to try and pacify. But I worry about Mike Adams saying, do not escalate. If we don't escalate, what do we do? Just passively let them kill us all?
Well, this is the litmus test. This is the canary in the coal mine. This is they've tried it on Helena to see what people's responses are. If what is being described is atrocious, and tyrannical as it is, if that's the reality, then Milton will be a escalation, a notch up. They will try and get defense contractors, the same types that blew up the Boston Marathon race, the same types that engage in these other false flag events, a psychopathic, potential, what is it, Masonic sort of linked group. But this comes down to DeSantis. Florida is ground zero. Florida is the battleground. DeSantis, a Republican governor, needs to declare, in a sense, martial law and deputize everybody and anybody, including military vets and police and civilians with guns, to say, no, we are first and foremost the first responders. We will provide everything needed for the people who have been hurt, and everybody will be returning to their homes and their businesses as soon as they choose. We're not mandating people leave. We're not expelling people. We are strongly recommending that based on the potentiality of this, it's wise to leave, but that's up to you. Americans should never be expelled from their homes or businesses by the government, ever. If they want to stick it out and die or live, that's up to them. So DeSantis really is the one to determine, is Florida going to fight against this and survive this act of tyranny, or is he going to tuck his tail between his legs and be part of this catastrophe?
I think DeSantis is going to be okay, Scott. What worries me is the following. They're going to steal the election. They're going to put these numbskulls in, and they're going to tell us there's not a damn thing we can do about it. I think we've reached a point of no return. I think this is so blatant. When the government is no longer hiding its objective of stealing our land and killing the people, I don't see how we have any choice. And if that involved postponing the election, well, they were going to steal it anyway. So I'm not at all sure we're worse off. And if Trump can provide leadership from the national level, that would be wonderful. But I think we, the people, are going to have to assume responsibility for our own fate, Scott. I think we have reached that point.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jim. And again, I'll remind people the affidavit, the individual affidavit that you can get, we'll put it up on the website, greatawakeningstv.com. That affidavit says very simply, and in fact, I'm not sure if I have it right in front of me, but that affidavit says, be advised, due to the Supreme Court case that is currently unfolding, which challenges Kamala Harris and her validity to be president based on her not being a natural born citizen, we are declaring this affidavit that Kamala Harris is not qualified to be president because she's not natural born. Therefore, any order, any action, any appointment by her is null and void. It is a violation of the Constitution, and I would be committing treason if I recognized a non-constitutionally able, qualified person to be president. This is the affidavit people need to get out to divorce themselves from any future claims or orders or actions by Kamala Harris. It is a declaration of your independence, and it is essentially recognizing that she is not qualified according to the Constitution to be president, and you will not be victimized by any agenda or orders that she releases. Jim?
I think they're already anticipating that Democrats are overwhelmingly unpopular. Any kind of election that's remotely honest is going to lead to a massive loss to the Democrats and a landslide for Trump. So I think they're preempting that. They're acting now. This is a preemptive strike, Scott, as I see it. This is their October surprise. And they're going to just wait and see if the people are able to rise to the occasion. I think in this instant, Mike Adams has it wrong because they're going to steal the election. So what the hell? Why should we stand passively by and let them steal the election when they're not going to do a damn thing to help us, but only continue to kill us? God, I think we have reached that point.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jim, and that's what always alarms me about some of these armchair analysts like Adams and others who have never worn the uniform, never sworn the oath, and never carried a gun, and never fought an enemy, and have never taken the oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If this is a domestic enemy, which all of its actions seem to indicate, you are bound by your oath as a soldier, as an officer, and indeed as a citizen to defend against those domestic enemies. And that may require killing domestic enemies who are trying to kill you slowly or quickly. So people really need to begin meditating on these actions and these events and the timeline that's now involved to mentally prepare themselves for worst case scenario. Everyone wants a smooth transitional election. Everyone would love the idea of Trump and Kamala Harris and all things being equal, the American election goes through. But that's, I think, fantasy based on the pathological, psychotic nature of the Democrats and their obsession to control and their obsession to overturn the tables of America and transform it into a Bolshevik type of police state. They are not ever going to abandon that. So they have to be aggressively and violently, perhaps, pulled out of power by any means necessary. And forget the cosmetics of what it would look like. Sometimes the only thing that matters is you, your town, your county, and your state. And there are a lot of other good conservative states that would form independent republic alliances, the Midwest, the northern states, North Dakota, South Dakota, Florida, or Nebraska, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska. All these states represent traditional family values, flyover country. And this is the time where their character is going to be needed most to inspire the rest of the softer, underbellied, life of leisure people that have never quite suffered to the degree that they're going to be. So we have to be prepared for a worst case scenario. Jim, I'll hand it to you to give us your closing thoughts. Go ahead.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, it's that perhaps the most primitive right of mankind is to defend yourself. If someone else is trying to kill you, you are entitled to defend yourself, even if that entails killing them. We ought to appreciate we're at the bottom line. The government of the United States is out to kill the citizens of the United States. Think about it. What are your options? Are you going to be pacific, passive, and allow the government to kill you? Because by God, that's what they're going to do. Think about it. I say, lock and load.
That's right. And as you said, when the government comes to take your guns, it is the time to use them. Jim, always a pleasure to have you on GreatAwakeningsTV.com. We encourage people to look at Jim's writings and his website, JamesFetzer.org is your blog, I believe. And
James H. Fetzer.org. Thank you, Scott. Yes.
We will see you next time. God bless you. Good night.